How does a young school teacher become one of the most infamous murder suspects in America? To understand how Carolyn Warmus became known around the world as the fatal attraction killer, we must first have to understand the decisions, relationships, and the moments that slowly brought her to that point. Carolyn Warmus grew up in a middle class family in Michigan. She was intelligent, she was driven, and she did really well in school. Friends described her as outgoing and confident. Like many adults, she was looking toward the future. She earned a degree in education and eventually accepted a teaching position in Westchester County, New York. For Carolyn, it was a fresh start, a chance to build the career she had dreamed of. Among Carolyn's new coworkers was a fellow teacher named Paul Solomon. Paul was respected by students and by staff. He was intelligent, he was personable, and he was easy to talk to. Outside of school, he had what appeared to be a successful life. He was married to Jeanne Solomon, another teacher, and together they were raising their teenage son. As Carolyn and Paul spent more time together, their friendship grew. Eventually, those conversations became more and more personal. Then Paul dropped a bombshell on Carolyn. He told her his marriage was effectively over. He claimed that he and Betty Jean were staying together mostly because of financial reasons and for the sake of their son. Carolyn believed him. As time went on, their relationship became romantic. It wasn't something they could share publicly. You see, at school, they were coworkers. Outside of school, they were carrying on a secret affair. For Carolyn, this wasn't just a casual relationship. She saw a future with Paul. She wrote affectionate letters, spent time with him whenever she could, and she believed they were building a life together. But there was one problem. Paul never left his wife. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. Each time Carolyn expected things to change, they stayed the same. It would seem that Paul never seriously intended to leave his wife, and apparently he had tried to end the affair several times. But allegedly, Paul repeatedly told her he wanted to leave his wife and that he needed more time. Carolyn believed that eventually they would be together. This went on for 18 months. On Sunday morning, January 15th, in 1989, Paul left home with his son for basketball activities. Betty Jean stayed behind. Sometime that morning, someone entered the Solomon home. Then, gunfire. 9 shots were fired from a .25 caliber handgun. When Paul returned home around midday, he began searching for his wife. Upstairs, he found Betty Jean lying on the bedroom floor, critically wounded, but still alive. Emergency responders rushed her to the hospital. Doctors fought to save her. They couldn't. Betty Jean Solomon died from her injuries. Within hours, detectives began asking the same question everyone else was asking. Who would want to kill a respected school teacher in her own home? Detectives always begin with the people closest to the victim. Paul Solomon became one of the first people they examined. His timeline was checked and his movements were verified. For Carolyn, everything changed the moment detectives knocked on her door. She admitted to the relationship. She didn't even try to hide it. Piece by piece, investigators began building a case, and more evidence began to come out, including the information about the alleged purchase of a .25 caliber handgun just days before the murder. Carolyn insisted she was innocent. Detectives became increasingly convinced she wasn't. And before long, one teacher's private relationship would become front page news across America. The prosecution argued Carolyn became increasingly frustrated waiting for Paul to leave his wife. Eventually, they claimed, she decided to eliminate the obstacle herself. The defense attacked nearly every part of that theory. They argued there was no murder weapon, no fingerprints placed in Carolyn inside the house, no eyewitnesses who actually saw her commit the crime. They also questioned the reliability of several witnesses, and they challenged parts of the forensic evidence. The trial ended in a hung jury. Jurors simply couldn't reach a unanimous verdict. Prosecutors decided to try the case again. This time, they refined their presentation and again focused on the pattern they believed pointed directly to Carolyn. After weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated. This time, they reached a verdict: guilty. Carolyn Warmus was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to 25 years to life. After serving more than 27 years in prison, Carolyn Warmus was released on parole in 2019. To this day, she maintains she did not kill Betty Jeanne Solomon. Did investigators convict the right person, or did they stop looking once they found someone who fit the story?